stuck between a libertarian and a Republican? Welcome to Publitarian Podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. This is Ronald Johnson, Publitarian, coming at you again with another episode of Publitarian Podcast, and we are up to episode number 80, and I'm going to call this Happy Belated Birthday, America, because I can't believe I let time pass and I forgot my favorite holiday. Tell them about it, Mr. Announcer Guy.
Around this day, somewhat 244 years ago, a great experiment in liberty took place. It was the birth of the greatest country in the history of the world, the red, white, and blue. And no, I'm not talking about those cheese-eating surrender monkeys. I'm talking about the most badass country on the planet.
That's right, I did not forget Happy Birthday, America, even though it is belated. I was just not able to record a podcast in time, but here we are. That's right, the most badass country, well, ever. So badass that people that hate it won't leave it. Yeah, we got a lot of crap going on in this country right now, but I do not see anybody lining up to leave it, left or right. Looks like we're going to be sticking it out for the long haul. So 2020's been crazy, and dude, I don't even know what the rest of the year is going to hold. I don't have a crystal ball, but it has been crazy. But anyway, on to the celebration. July 4th, the president gave just an amazing speech at Mount Rushmore. And I'm not going to run the whole entire speech. I'm sure you've seen clips of it or what he said. The fireworks were awesome. They did this cool display where, they lit up the president's heads on the mountain and then shot off the fireworks behind it. Did all these, planes come in and everything. It was really, really cool. And one of the first things he said, though, when he opened up that I wanted to touch on, and he said to thunderous applause and USA, USA chants, he said, "I'm here as your president to proclaim before the country and before the world, this monument will never be desecrated. These heroes will never be defaced. Their legacy will never, ever be destroyed. Their achievements will never be forgotten, and Mount Rushmore will stand forever as an eternal tribute to our forefathers and to our freedom." I mean, that sums it up right there. And what we got going on right now with what I would call revisionist history of how this country was founded and the sacrifice that it took to get us to where we are, it amazes me. And I mean, it's all by design. I've had Alex Newman on the podcast before, and we've talked about the education system and how it's designed to promote Marxism and ignorance and leftism. And if you are a kid listening to this podcast, get out of the public school system. Get out now while you can. If you're a parent listening to this podcast, get your kid out of the public school system. Get them out now. And don't say, "Oh, not my school." Yes, your school too. They're all like that. Either move to private education or homeschooling, some other type of education. Online school. I got a buddy that does online school. Been very successful with that. Anyway, didn't mean to dovetail into that. I'm seeing a lot of history trying to be torn down. I'm seeing statues being torn down. I'm seeing history being rewritten to the point to where something that we thought absurd only a couple of years ago is actually taking place, where Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln are up for debate on whether they represent what this country stands for. I remember President Trump a couple years ago saying, hey, if they come for the Confederate monuments, they're going to start coming for George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, and everybody scoffed him off. Yeah, and now look what's happening. That exact thing is happening. A tearing down of history, a rewriting of history. The taking of what is a unique story that took place 244 years ago and trying to sully it into something that it's not. If you look back at the history of this country and how it was started, I can't explain anything other than divine providence of how this country was birthed, because we had the empire of Great Britain. Yeah, the empire. They weren't just relegated to an island back then. They conquered and colonized a lot of the world. Going up against Great Britain, and we weren't supposed to survive. By all odds, we weren't supposed to survive. And everybody's heard the classic, bloody footprints in the snow, that story, yada, yada, yada. And, but we were also battling smallpox. British were even trying to infect us with smallpox. There's a lady that wrote a whole book on this. Fascinating. We didn't have any immunity or any kind of build-up to smallpox in the colonies back then. And the British soldiers did. So not only are we fighting this bloody footprints in the snow, people starving, dying, trying to fight this empire that has crushed a lot of the world, Great Britain, not only are we fighting them, we're also dealing with smallpox. And you know the rest of the story. You know how it goes. Here we are. We're a country. As Rush Limbaugh says, we run rings around the world. We feed and clothe the world. And as I've already stated, the people that hate this country don't even want to leave it. So there you go. The celebrities that always threaten to move to Canada or move to other places, they never do. They never leave. They always stay because the country is that great. Moving on, also, the president said, "We gather tonight to herald the most important day in the history of nations, July 4, 1776. At those words, every American heart should swell with pride, every American family should cheer with delight, and every American patriot should be filled with joy, because each of you lives in the most magnificent country in the history of the world, and it will soon be greater than ever before." Our founders launched not only a revolution in government, but a revolution in the pursuit of justice, equality, liberty, and prosperity. No nation has done more to advance the human condition than the United States of America, and no people have done more to promote human progress than the citizens of our great nation. I mean, that's just... I can't even add to that. That's just, perfection. And he's right. Every American heart should. I'm not talking about some, blind Pavlovian loyalty to something. But also what I'm seeing is such an adversity to, like I said, things that would have just been absurd to be against, even just a few years ago. Where people are scared to wear United States apparel, in their own country. That's crazy to me. My buddy Rob, that runs the Wise Guys Show podcast, was telling me. Now, he is basically ground zero. He lives in the Bay Area, California, and he unapologetically goes out with his MAGA hat on or his Trump gear or whatever, and he said predominantly, even in the liberal hellhole where he is, he gets compliments, applause, or good for you, man, that kind of stuff. And it's surprising. It always makes me think there's more of us than what the media and academia and Hollywood and Twitter would have you believe. And when I look at the contrast with what the Founding Fathers and the people that fought the original Revolutionary War in 1776 forward until the Constitution, when I see the contrast of people that just really aren't willing to fight and that are willing to comply, and when I say comply, I'm not getting into the mask debate, the coronavirus mask debate. I'm not really here to hash that out. I'm not saying I believe it or don't believe it. I just think it's a stupid argument to have. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. But when I look and see what we are willing to put up with as far as government intervention and people bullying us, contrasted with what we were willing to put up then, it's really crazy. We were going to war over a tea tax that was, 2%? 3%? And we now get taxed at around 30%. And we're scared to talk about how great our country is. We're scared to talk about who or what we really are on social media. We're scared to talk about who or what we are out in public. When I look at that contrast, it's scary to me that this once great nation has been beaten so far back that we have people that aren't even willing to say things that would have just been common sense years ago. And again, I'm not talking about some Pavlovian blind slobbering loyalty to something that doesn't matter to you. But this country should matter to you if you live in it, especially if you're a citizen of this country, because what we have came at a great price, and it continues to come at a great price. And haters from the outside, other countries, or people that have no allegiance to this country, can't understand that because they don't know the struggle and the sacrifice that it took to get here. And a lot of citizens of this country don't understand the struggle and sacrifice that it took to get here. And haters, like I said before, haters always hate up. The hate never comes down. So haters will always hate about how great this country is, and they want to ignore the fact that we really do feed and clothe the world and run rings around the world. If you want innovation, this is where you come. I've seen like social media success gurus talk about this before, that all you see is the snapshot of the person with the successful life, and you're jealous, but you don't see what it took for that person to get to that successful life. And that's how it is in this country. Outsiders or people that have no allegiance to this country just look at America as this, either a shining city on a hill that they need to aspire to, or they see it as this evil, unjust, fat, corporate, nasty monster that took everything through racism and colonialism and pillaging and looting, which isn't the case. Are there bad actors in this country? Of course. Are there dark chapters in this country? Of course there are. Just like every other country since the dawn of time. But what country gets attacked for its stains in its past like America does? Detractors are so quick to bring up slavery, but not the abolition of slavery. They're quick to bring up how past presidents owned slaves, but not how those past presidents freed slaves. They're quick to bring up unjust wars, but fail to see the successful and necessary battles that were also fought in this country. And when you look, and I've talked to history teachers about this before, when you look at history with no context, and you just look at history with your 2020 lens and go, and 2020, I mean the year, not looking through 2020 vision glasses. When you look at history with your 2020 lens and you go, oh, well, looking back 200 years ago, oh, that was horrible how we did that, or whatever, and not taking history in its context with how did every other country deal with their business back then? Not too differently, except for the fact that our forefathers were brilliant and had the insight of recognizing these principles that all men are created equal, and that we do have certain inalienable rights, and that we need to govern ourselves and not be beholden to some kind of monarch or sovereignty or another country. Revolutionary thinking back then, pun intended. But people always just pick and choose what they want to see in history and see the negative and not the positive. This is left or right, by the way. Anybody can do this. Any political persuasion can do this. Pick what they like from history and amplify that, and shove to the background that they don't want to face. I think all history should be studied. I think all history should be learned from, especially history that you don't like. That way you're not making the same mistakes. See, real history isn't taught anymore. That's why Marxists and socialists still thinks that Marxism and socialism hasn't really been tried before, when they don't understand that socialism was tried all the way back in our founding colony. William Bradford wrote in William Bradford's journal, like the original Pilgrims, he wrote about how they tried socialism back then and it didn't work. Everybody just had a big communal stash and everybody contributed to it. And it was giving people like plots of land, giving them something to work for, giving them incentive that actually helped pull people out of the poverty and misery that they were in. It's rarely taught in history. But if you look at the true history of this country, scars, mistakes, and all, you'll see how this country has learned from it and has been better because of it. So anyway, I didn't want to make this into a Debbie Downer episode because we're celebrating America's birthday today. So anyway, I digress back to the speech. The president ended the speech by saying this: "Uplifted by the titans of Mount Rushmore, we will find unity that no one expected. We will make strides that no one thought possible. This country will be everything that our citizens have hoped for so many years and that our enemies fear, because we will never forget that American freedom exists for American greatness. And that's what we have, American greatness." Really good way to end the speech. Oh, and speaking of President Trump, one of my Canadian followers DM'd me, and he said this: "I did a test with a few people I know that have a very leftist ideology that really don't like Trump, and I talked about the First Step Act, but I told them that it was an act in Sweden, and they loved it so much until I tell them who actually did it." I thought that was cool. It's funny, like the media and academia and Hollywood and social media has demonized the president so much that just everything he does is unequivocally evil with no redemption whatsoever. It's like Trump drinks water the wrong way. Can you believe that in one of his rallies, he had to show that he could hold a glass with one hand because there was so much fake news that he was using two hands to drink water? And he was like, "I'm saluting people 600 times at these things, and my hand gets tired." Oh, man. Anyway, that had nothing to do with nothing. I'm glad that I'm an American. I'm glad I live in this country, and I do think the best is yet to come as long as we don't capitulate. And I don't say this as a Debbie Downer. I say this to get you motivated. Start standing up and start being vocal about what you believe in. I think you would be pleasantly surprised about the people around you of any color, creed, race, religion that feel the same as you. And I do think that the minority of liberals and Marxists that make the most noise are just that. They're just noisemakers, inflated by this social media Twitter mob that chooses to put them in the forefront. So I think you would be pleasantly surprised if you start standing up and making your opinions known and making your voices heard. As always, I challenge you to get involved in this upcoming 2020 election. I think it's going to be one of the most important ones of our lives. I think it will actually determine the trajectory of this country. Get involved, work the polls, call people, email people, DM people, make social media posts about it, and get people involved, get people fired up, and get people stirred up, and let's save this country, and let's keep this country on a great trajectory so we can celebrate many, many more amazing birthdays. That will do it for me on this edition of Publitarian Podcast. If you want to reach out to me, you can. I'm publitarian@gmail.com or thepublitarian@gmail.com. I'm on all the social medias. My Parler's gotten big as of late since podcasters have started directing people towards Parler, but I'm on all the social medias as Publitarian. Feel free to reach out to me. And happy belated birthday, America, and I'll talk to you guys on the next episode of Publitarian Podcast. Thank you.
You've been listening to Bubblitarian Podcast, copyright 2020.